you plant daffodil bulbs in a growing buff rattan planter?
Well, you need one of our growing buff rattan planters. These come lined with a plastic liner. You'll also need some compost. I like to use peat-free compost. Peat-free is much better for the environment. Soon all compost will be peat-free, which is brilliant. So if you can get peat-free, that's the good stuff, best stuff to get. And I also use some gloves, some gardening gloves to keep your hands nice and clean. And you'll need a pair of scissors to cut the hole in the bottom of the pot, a croc to go over the hole to stop all the compost going through. So a croc could be an old bit of terracotta pot, or you could use stones at the bottom, some big stones around there to stop the compost coming out. Obviously you'll also need some daffodil bulbs, and also need a trowel. So I'm going to use a trowel in the grit, which once everything's planted up, I'll put the grit on top, which I think looks really nice and goes really well with the planter.
And obviously it's September at the moment, so presumably you'd need to plant now in order for a display next spring.
Generally you would plant between September and November. That's what the experts say. But probably we could get away with planting in December because we live down the south and it's a lot milder here. But probably best to stick to what the experts say, between September and November.
Brilliant.
So first of all, we need to cut a hole in the planter. So we just grab the middle of the plastic and bring that up. So just sort of a bit about that big. And then come in and cut the hole.
Okay. And you just cut one hole?
Yes, just cut one hole in this size of planter. That'll be enough to allow for drainage.
Okay.
If it was a much bigger planter, you'd probably want multiple holes.
Okay.
So next we need to put the croc in. So this is just an old bit of terracotta pot, but you could equally use stones instead. And then just pop that over the top of the hole. So next thing we need to do is put the compost in. So I'm going to put my gloves on for this because I don't really want compost up my nails. Probably at this point I'd just give it a little gently flatten it down, just to firm it up very gently. I don't want to dislodge the croc at the bottom, and I don't want it to be so compact that when the roots grow they struggle to make their way through the compost.
Okay.
So we want to probably stop about now because we're about 4 to 6 inches from the top of the planter.
Okay.
But I'll just check the height of the daffodil, because if we grab a daffodil bulb, it needs to be planted about twice the height of the daffodil bulb.
Okay.
So that looks about twice the height, I would say. So I think this is about the right level. It doesn't have to be exact, but roughly about here. So I'll pop that one there in the middle to start us off.
Great.
It's also important which way up you plant the daffodil bulb. So as you can see, this is its roots.
Yeah.
And this is the top of the plant of the daffodil. So it needs to be planted that way up, not that way up.
Okay.
So that's important. Also, it's important to mention that daffodil bulbs are toxic. They are poisonous. So when you're handling them, it's important to wear a pair of gardening gloves. And obviously, don't let your pets get near them, or children.
Okay.
So we'll now fill up the planter with our daffodil bulbs.
Okay.
So just tend to, make sure they're spaced sort of equally apart. It's much better to plant them closer together than further apart, because often some just don't come up, and then you might have a gap. But also it just looks nicer when there's loads of them rather than the odd one. So now we've got our daffodils in the pot. We just need to cover them in compost.
Okay.
So we need to be gentle when we put this in. Again, I like to sort of crumble it almost like breadcrumbs, really, because we don't want to dislodge the daffodils at all. We want them to stay in place where they are. Just going to pat the compost down just to sort of get rid of any air pockets that might be there, but just doing it very gently because I don't want to disturb the daffodils. Okay, so finally I'm going to put some grit on top.
Okay.
So I'll just move this over so I can get the grip up here. And I just spoon it on top. I just think it's really attractive, and it just goes, the colour of it goes really well with the rattan. This isn't an instant display, we have to wait for this.
Yeah.
It's some, at least it makes it all look really attractive and pretty to look at in the meantime.
Do you just get this from a garden centre?
Yes, you can. They do it in all sorts of different colours and types and what have you. I just like the colour of this one. I just think it's just so nice.
It goes
all
nicely
the different
with the
covers.
rattan.
I'll just smooth that over.
And
bit more, I think.
Presumably the daffodils will be able to grow through the stones.
That's right. Yeah, they'll just push their way through.
Looks nice. Colours are beautiful.
Yeah, they are nice, aren't they?
Really lovely. Especially nice for a nice coastal.
Yes, it would be, wouldn't it?
Lovely. Beautiful.
Yes. Yeah, I love it. I love these stones, but you could use other types of material. Can you pass me the anti-wash truck?
Yeah.
So, thank you. So, in here, alternatives that we've got here, you could use pebbles on the top, which would give it even more of a coastal vibe, or some slate. Slate comes in all sorts of different colours these days, which looks really nice as well. Or you might want to go for a more natural look, which is just using a bit of bark type mulch over the top, which is really nice as well.
Very rustic.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? So there are options there, or you could go for gravel, you could go for different coloured gravel, or you could just leave it just as the compost. That's absolutely fine as well.
Okay.
Thank you. And then finally I'm going to put this in place in the garden and then give it a good water.
Lovely.
So finally I'm going to give it a good water. So probably about half of this watering can.
And how often should you water daffodils?
Obviously good water to begin with. You probably won't need to water it during the winter. As long as it isn't a very dry winter. If it's a dry winter, you will need to water it. But as we get into the spring, if it's a dry spring, you will need to water it. But a good way of testing whether it needs watering or not is to just put your finger in, obviously without a glove on, put your finger into the pot, into the soil. If the finger comes out nice and very, very dry, it needs a good drink, so give it a good drink. But if it comes out wet, or you can feel moisture in there, don't water.
So essentially if the soil is dry, it needs water. If it's wet, it's fine.
Yeah.
Fine.
So that's how you plant daffodils in our grey buff rattan planters.
Beautiful. Can't wait to see what they look like next spring.
Yeah, me neither. I think they're going to look amazing. Thank you for watching. See you next time.